What's going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the recap edition, going back and taking a look at the racing action from the weekend of May the 4th, 2019. Happened to be Kentucky Derby weekend. I don't think anyone anticipated the outcome that we got as far as the Derby was concerned. Not necessarily because of who won, but how that whole thing played out. Go over that. We'll dive into some charts, talk about the race as a whole, and potential just ramifications going forward of things that it may mean. However you listen to this thing, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. Thank you for doing so. Please rate, review, and subscribe. However you listen to this thing, questions, comments, concerns beneath the video player on YouTube or directly to me over on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. If for some reason you were blocked over the weekend on Twitter, it's probably because you swore at me. I don't have a problem with you saying you disagree with me and having your opinion, but you start swearing at me, that's when I'm just going to block you. I won't even mute you. So just food for thought going forward. If you have nothing great to say, if you disagree, that's great. If you're going to swear at me, I'll probably just block you. So fair warning, food for thought. Let's get into the Kentucky Derby. Mile and a quarter, 3-year-olds, race 12 at Churchill Downs on Saturday. There's 2 hours between dirt races. The rain came in a major way. You ended up with a sloppy racing surface. Post-time favorite at odds of 4-1 was improbable, one of 3 in here for Bob Baffert. But again, this was a race that it felt like with the scratch of Omaha Beach, it could have gone a number of ways. High Cal was scratched the morning of the Derby, or I should say Friday morning, one of the two. I don't remember how it was, but he ended up being scratched, did not run because of a foot abscess. That left you a field of 19 when it was all said and done. We can't show you the replay, but there are a number of places that you can find the replay of the Kentucky Derby, and I'm sure most of you listening or watching this have seen it 5 million times because we all have specifically certain instances rounding the far turn. Let's take a look at the results. Maximum Security crosses the wire first, but he is disqualified and placed 17th. Your winner of the 145th Kentucky Derby is Country House for Bill Mott. He goes off at 65-1, one of the longest shots in the race, I should say. Code of Honor is moved up to second for Shug McGahee at 14-1. Tacitus rounds out your trifecta at odds of 5-1. Let's talk about Country House. 2 of 7 lifetime, 5 times in the money from 7 lifetime starts, $2.1 million in career earnings. Owned by Mrs. J.V. Fields Jr., E.J.M. McFadden Jr., and L&J Foxwoods. Trained by Bill Mott, bred by J.V. Shields Jr. in Kentucky, ridden to victory by Flavian Pratt. You can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He is by Looking at Lucky out of a war chant mare named Quake Lake. Let's talk about some of the figures before we talk about just everything that happened. 101 buyer speed figure for Maximum Security, 118 time form U.S. rating, pace adjusted, 119 raw. Obviously, he's disqualified, moved down to 17th. So your winner in this spot, Country House, earns a 99 buyer and a 118 raw and time and pace adjusted time form U.S. rating. Time form U.S. This is just a peculiarly run race, just all around. The half mile call was color coded red. The mile call was color coded blue. So Maximum Security was able to get out there and then back the pace down. I don't even know where to begin. Let's start with Maximum Security. His performance. I think by most people's estimation, mine included, Maximum Security was the best horse in the race. Did he deserve to be disqualified? In my opinion, it's not really even that. It's not even that questionable. Like, very clearly, he deserved to be disqualified for what he did. I would be very curious to know how many people that go way against that idea, that say he shouldn't have been disqualified. Is it because you had a vested interest, whether it was from a wager standpoint or a pick standpoint, or you were involved with the connections or whatever else it may be? How many of you that disagree with the disqualification were in that camp, and how many of you just disagree with it and you're a fan or you're a gambler, you're a horse player, that you pay attention to more than just one race a year? Because if that's the case, I have a difficult time understanding where you're coming from. When you watch so many different angles of this, the best angle is one that Scott Carson on Twitter had posted. And I don't know why it never got onto the telecast on Saturday, but Scott put the little video clip out there. And if you see that, I don't know how you can't agree that a disqualification was basically not just the right call, but the only call. There was no way that you couldn't do it. Now, I had tweeted as the inquiry was going on that I'd be surprised if they did it because it's the Kentucky Derby. Any other day, I could see it. I didn't think that they would do it, but at the same time, I kind of like that they did, because why is it being called any differently because it's the Kentucky Derby? I've read a number of people suggest that, different stages throughout the season in sports, whether it's, let's just use hockey because hockey and basketball are going on right now, but hockey especially. Games are called differently in the regular season than they are in the postseason. The refs swallow the whistle. Well, that's all well and good, but they still call penalties when things are egregious. And this was an egregious foul from maximum security. He moved out 5 paths. He didn't move out one, which would have been bad enough directly in front of War Will. He moved out 1 and then 4 more. It seems very difficult for me to listen to anyone going the opposite direction and saying that it was not a warranted disqualification. If you want to say that there have been other things that have happened in the Derby in prior years that should have warranted disqualification or were worse than this and didn't result in a DQ, I'm not going to argue with that. But I think if you want to say that this is sort of like a watershed moment, that all of a sudden things are going to change going forward, they might, and I think they probably should. I don't think that one race should be viewed or called differently than any other race. If this race was run any other day of the week, if it was run on any other Saturday of the year at Churchill Downs, it would have been a no-brainer. It would have been a disqualification immediately. Now, do the stewards deserve some of the blame for not initially throwing up the inquiry sign? And it took an objection from Flavien Prat, who really was not, his horse was not affected really all that much by any of this stuff. He might have been floated out an extra path, but there was never any real contact, and he clearly is the beneficiary of this whole thing. Should it have been the steward's job to throw the inquiry sign up? Yes, I believe so. And the folks that have pointed out that if the sort of objection had not gone through, then there probably would have been no change because the stewards weren't going to look at it. Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible look for the stewards. That's a bad look for horse racing in general. I think more and more people are getting behind the idea that you need to have some... Look, the central governing body, I think we should have something like that. It seems like that is a difficult thing to do, given there are so many individual parties looking out for themselves. Just being real about it, that seems like it's very difficult to get all of those groups all together. I do think there is something, though, that could be done and should be done. I understand there are stewards in all different states and that look over a number of different things. But when it comes to inquiries and objections, why can there not be a situation, whether it is the NHL where they call Toronto or whether it is the NFL and they call New York, why is it not a situation where for any and all inquiries and objections, there is one set group of people? They're the only ones that oversee these things. Now, the stewards all across the country and the different states, they do a number of other things as far as I know. And again, I'm not an insider in that kind of world, but as far as I know, they have a number of other tasks and jobs that they need to do. When it comes to this sort of thing, I think there should just be one panel that looks over everything, and that way you do get some uniformity. It's the same people looking at it all the time. And yes, there should be some sort of established guidelines, but it's not a great look in general, but I like the idea that they ruled it fair and accurately. There was a foul committed. He had to be disqualified. I think he was the best horse. I don't think Country House at any point was winning this race. He took his shot turning for home, and he got turned away by a better horse. He's the beneficiary of it. Is it kind of leave a sour taste in your mouth? Sure, sometimes. That's why I tweeted after the race. I feel bad for the connections involved for both of the top two. I feel bad for Jason Service. I feel bad for Luis Saez. I feel bad for the owners of Maximum Security. And I feel bad for Bill Mott, Flavien Prat, and the owners of Country House. Because the Maximum Security folks, how can you not feel bad for people that think that they just won the biggest race in the United States, or one of the biggest races, if not the biggest race in the world? How can you not feel bad for them when they had the best horse and they got taken down? But at the same time, it was deservedly so. And on the flip side with Country House, how can you not feel bad for them where, yes, they won. They're going to get all the money. They get all the accolades. The horse's name is up at Churchill Downs now. But I'm sure this isn't how they envisioned winning a Kentucky Derby. They didn't envision being the second horse to cross the line and then being the ones wearing the roses. I think it's a tough situation all around for both of those outfits. Now, how does this all shake up and shake things down going forward? Maximum Security sounds like he's going to pass the Preakness. They're going to look to a campaign later on in the summer, whether it's the Haskell, whether it's the Travers, any of those other races. What you can't deny is that Maximum Security is an incredibly talented racehorse. I still think he is very, very green. And by the way, Luis Saez did a great job. He didn't do anything wrong here. The horse ducked out. You could see him if you watch. And I know those of you that think I'm crazy with the lead changes, watch him swap leads rounding the turn. And that's when he begins to veer out there, and then Luis Saez corrects him. He finishes on his left lead. So I think he's still very green. I think there's still a lot to learn there, but the talent is undeniable. It's hard to argue with a horse that is as talented and has run as fast as he has in so many different instances. And the chart of this race is very interesting to look at, because really the only part of the pace that's really around is Maximum Security, and he was the one that went gate to wire. But now, having said that, a horse like War of Will, I think he would have finished potentially better than he did. And again, that's the basis of the part of the basis anyway, the DQ, not just War of Will, but you did have Bodie Express. You had Long Range Toddy. They were all impeded and all sort of interfered with by Maximum Security. But War of Will, he was relatively close to the pace. He was in behind a little bit keen early on. Let's just take him right in order. Code of Honor. Look, he ran a much better race than I thought he would. I didn't think this distance was going to work for him. I think he felt it for the final eighth of a mile, but you know what? He acquitted himself very nicely. He finished on his left lead. He had the dream trip, though. When Maximum Security floats way off the rail, Code of Honor shoots up the inside and goes on with it. Fine effort from him. I think he's going to be useful in big races going forward. Tacitus, good race from him. He starts to warm up rounding the far turn. Gets in a little bit tight, maybe has to slow down for a brief moment, but then he finishes nicely, comes home in 25-12. That's one of the fastest final eights in the entire race. You'd have to think there were bigger and better things going forward for him. Improbable, he never really looked... He was in a good position throughout, but he never really looked like he was going to threaten at any point, in my opinion anyway. He just felt like he just kind of was even throughout. I never at any point thought he looked like a winner of this race. And having said that, he was in a great position all the way around. I think if you wanted to make an argument for anyone else other than Maximum Security running the best race, I think you have to look at Game Winner. Just simply because I was stunned that he was as far back as he was. I know they were going fast early on. For what it's worth, the fractions, 22-1, 46-3 for a half, 12-2 for three quarters, 38-2 for a mile. That's when they slowed it down according to time form. But they were in the slowing down process at that point. They stopped the clock in 2:03-4. Game Winner was impossibly wide. And for him to be as far back as he was, to finish as well as he did, for perspective, Maximum Security comes home. I'm going to just rattle them off in order of the chart, knowing that Maximum Security technically was placed 17th. Maximum Security, 25-28. These are their final eighths of a mile. 25-56, 25-73, 25-12, 25-48, 24-97 for Game Winner. His final. I'm sorry, these are all quarter miles, final quarters. For his final quarter mile to come home in 24.97 after being about 10 paths wide on the far turn, and he spun about 14 paths wide off the coming for home. I mean, this is just a giant, giant effort from Game Winner all around. He earned a 96 Beyer and a 116 time form US rating. I think if you're looking at anyone other than Maximum Security for running the best race, I think it has to be Game Winner, simply because of the amount of ground that he carried. Master Fencer, give credit to the Japanese connections. The horse came through. He finished in 24-24. If you look at Trackus, I believe it's even quicker than that. That's up to you. I'm using the final quarters and the incremental splits from Formulator. Look, good effort. He ran a heck of a lot better than I thought he would. I don't know if all of a sudden that means that he's a primetime player for some of these other big races going forward, but a big effort there. And War of Will, he'll be the one that I'll sort of button things up on as far as just the analysis of the race. I thought he ran an exceptional race, given the way that I laid things out. You can go back and watch the individual contender profiles over on the YouTube channel or on video.drf.com. And I said, given the idea that I don't think that Louisiana Derby he really got a heck of a lot out of, not only because he ended up with a little bit of an injury, pulled a muscle, but it's not a good way, and it's so far out in advance of the Derby. I don't think he's going to be ready to go. I think he's going to run. I shouldn't say it that way. I think he'll feel the effects of it. I think he'll be tight and ready to go, but the distance and eventually that layoff is going to get to him. And I said, I think he'll be in a good position. Maybe he'll flatten out down the lane wherever he ends up. Well, he was impeded. That didn't help his cause, but he did flatten out down the lane. He finished in 26:01 for his final quarter. But the way that he ran here, I think he's going to be sitting on a monster effort in the Preakness if he goes. It sounds like there's whispers that he may go. If he does, I know this sounds stupid because we're two weeks out for the most part. I just think he's sitting on an absolute monster if he gets to that point. And who knows? We got to see what the rest of the field looks like. But I can almost assure you I'll be picking War of Will in the Preakness, barring some just crazy circumstance going forward. The rest of the field, you can pick little holes out here and there. Horses that did run well, horses that didn't run well. My opinions for the weekend were just complete garbage. It is what it is. It happens from time to time. Not a great weekend for that kind of thing to happen for me, but what are you going to do? You lick your wounds and move on. But this race as a whole, I mean, it's a historic race. Going forward, this is going to be the race that is forever known as the horse that crossed the wire first, did not win the Kentucky Derby. Maximum Security, he finishes first and is disqualified and placed 17th because of the interference on the far turn. Man, there's a lot to digest here. I also tweeted something along the lines of I've never been a fan of this 20 horse field. I think it's stupid, frankly. We don't run any other races in the United States with 20 horses. I know other jurisdictions do. I know other places around the world do. The notion of running essentially teenagers at 20 horses in front of 150 or 170,000 people going a mile and a quarter, to me, it's a dumb idea. I don't, because we've always done it, or I don't know how many years the 20 horse field has been in, but I think it's a stupid idea. I understand it'll never change because of the handle that comes along with the additional betting interest, but I think 20 horses in a race is asinine here, especially at this age and the way everything looks. I would much prefer it down to 14. I know that'll never ever happen, but it is what it is. So that's why I tweeted that out. I believe Chris Larmy was the one that initially pointed out the horses coming out of the auxiliary gate. That sort of 14 post is a disaster. It seems like it's been the past handful of years anyway. I would love to see it as a 14 horse field. It'll never happen, so I'm not going to lose any sleep over that, but I felt like I would just get that out there on social media as well. The Kentucky Derby, it's in the books. We'll find out going forward what the ramifications are. You've heard the ownership group of Maximum Security say they're getting out. They're going to sell all their horses off. They are going to sue people. I have no idea about any of that stuff. We'll let the chips fall as they may. But for now, the things we do know. Maximum Security is a very good horse. He deserved to be disqualified, in my opinion, and I think in many people's opinion. He's a really nice horse, though, and he's going to do some big things going forward. Country House, though, via disqualification, wins the 145th Kentucky Derby with a 99 Beyer speed figure and a 118 Timeform US rating. We will find out if he goes on to Baltimore for the Preakness. It sounds like feels like there's an obligation from Bill Mott now. He initially had been thinking Belmont. Sounds like they may be going to Baltimore now in, 12 days' time here for the Preakness. We'll find out, though. I'm sure there's going to be much, much more to come from the fallout of Derby 145. Kentucky Oaks, not going to be nearly as long as the Kentucky Derby recap is. Let's take a look at the field of 14. There were some fireworks early on, especially. We'll touch on that briefly. But once the real running began, things were pretty straightforward. Post-time favorite was Bellafina. She needed to prove that sort of debacle last fall in the Breeders' Cup here at Churchill Downs was nothing more than an anomaly for her. She was the 9-5 favorite in this spot, but there were alternatives. If you wanted to take a shot against her, you had the reigning Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies champion Jaywalk, who won at Churchill Downs at a very nice price of 6-1. You had a horse like Restless Rider, who, sure, the post position was not ideal, but she seemed like she was coming up to this on a big effort. There looked like there was a ton of speed signed on. Ultimately, not how the race played out. Let's take a look at the results. Serengeti Empress, gate to wire, gets the job done at odds of 13-1. A visually impressive performance given the fraction she laid out. A little bit peculiar that there was no other speed that went with her, but maybe she's just that good, and she certainly loves Churchill Downs. Leora with a giant effort for Wayne Catalano. Hats off to Wayne Catalano, 38-1. I never anticipated this effort coming from her. I still think she'll be better going shorter, but a big effort from Leora at 38-1 to run second. And Lady Apple, the horse that I picked in here, I thought she ran her race. She tried, just not quite good enough for those top two. She runs third at odds of 10-1. Let's take a look at Serengeti Empress. She's 5 of 8 lifetime. Those are the only 5 times that she has finished in the money. But she is a millionaire now. She's owned by Joel Politi, trained by Tom Amos, bred by Equus Bloodstock LLC in Kentucky, ridden to victory by Jose Ortiz. You can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. She is by alternation out of a Bernardini mare named Havisham. 88 Beyer speed figure, 114 time form U.S. rating, 110 as far as the non-pace adjusted number is concerned. You see the fractions, time form U.S. color coded, the half, the three-quarter, and the mile calls, all of them red. You take a look at the fractions, 23 and 1, 46 and 3, 11 and 1 for three-quarters, 36 and 3 for the mile, 150 the final time. Look, again, it was just an instance where if you handicap the race, I expected anyway motion to motion to go. I expected some other horses to be relatively close. I was stunned at how far back Bellafino was early. And all of a sudden when the pace didn't materialize, and granted, I'm not taking anything away from Serengeti Empress. She went fast to get to that position. But boy, when she went out there and was able to just wing it on the front end, it's going to be very difficult to run her down, especially at Churchill Downs. Credit to Tom Amos, a great training job, especially considering the fact that she bled in that Fairgrounds Oaks. And to get her back and ready for an effort like this is a big effort. I don't know how I feel about the field as a whole, because the 88 that Serengeti Empress earned from a buyer standpoint and the 85 that Leora earned, they're solid, if not, they're unspectacular. There's a chasm of a drop-off, though, for the rest. Lady Apple is 77. Champagne Anyone is 77. Bellafina, 76. You're looking at a number of horses that earned, more than half the field that earned a sub-70 buyer speed figure. I don't know how that I don't know what that means going forward, other than I think this division could be ripe for an up-and-comer, perhaps a horse that didn't get into the race like Dunbar Road for Chad Brown. But I do think there is going to be an instance where some of these horses will improve doing different things. I would love to see, as well as she ran here, I'd love to see Leora turn back to a one-turn sort of configuration. I can see the Acorn at Belmont Park being a beautiful race for her. Serengeti Empress, the difficult thing for her is it feels like if she makes the front, she's tough to run down. And if she doesn't make the front, she's very vulnerable. That's a dangerous sort of combination going forward, because if you don't project her to make the front in some of these races, then it's going to be tough for her to win. But if she can make the top like she did in this race, or she did in the Pocahontas as a 2-year-old, she can put on a show. So she's a very difficult call for me going forward. Some of these other girls, I thought Champagne Anyone, she ran on nicely at the end of the race. It was a little bit too late. Some people believing the main track at Churchill a little bit on the speed-friendly side on Friday, so maybe you want to upgrade her a little bit. She was the only one that really closed from the back of the pack. We need to acknowledge Positive Spirit, who clipped heels. She was pinched in between early on, just out of the gate. She took a tumble, dumped Manny Franco. Sounds like everyone is okay, horse and rider, which is always a 2 thumbs up, good thing. Jaywalk was disqualified for her piece in that whole thing. All around, I don't know how I feel about this race. I would have loved to have seen if someone had gone and been aggressively ridden to try to go with Serengeti Empress. Instead, motion to motion, they chose to rate her for the first time, and it didn't work. But I do wonder, going forward, some of these girls, I think they'll be better doing different things. And again, with Serengeti Empress, the dangerous piece for a filly like this, if she makes the front, it could be showtime. If she doesn't make the front, I think she's very vulnerable. And I think this division is just very ripe for an opportunity for somebody else to show up and say, you know what, I'm here now. I'm going to take over this thing. It'll be very interesting to watch these 3-year-old girls as we go on here through 2019. We'll see what the field looks like in the Black-Eyed Susan in 2 weeks. Obviously see what happens at Belmont Park with races like the Mother Goose. But ultimately, Saratoga is really when the 3-year-olds will kind of take that next sort of move up with races like the CCA Oaks and obviously the Alabama later on. But Serengeti Empress, credit to the connections and good on them. Congratulations. A big effort from her winning the Longines Kentucky Oaks, a grade 1 race for the 3-year-old girls. 88 Beyer, 114 time form U.S. rating. All right, let's rip through some quick hits as far as the stakes action from Churchill is concerned on Friday and Saturday. Then we'll get into the weekend's best from a buyer standpoint and get you out of here in hopefully relatively short order. The 8 Bells Giant Speed from break even for Brad Cox. She ran them off their feet 22 and 44 with the opening quarters there. Just a giant race from her. She could be a major filly sprinter down the road. Edgewood, a newspaper record. She was a little bit keen early on. That turf had some give in it, and she just didn't quite have that punch down the lane. Concrete Rose, big effort from her. She came, rolled down over the top. I would expect a much better effort from Newspaper of Record second here off the bench, wherever that may be. We know that she's better than what we saw there in that race on Friday afternoon. You have to think that long layoff probably combined with the give in the turf, although she has run well over it in the past. I I would expect a much better effort from her second off the bench. The Ali Sheba, a massive effort, I thought, from McKenzie. Great ride from Smith. Didn't seem comfortable down on the rail. Eases him off, gets him out into the two-path, goes home. 109 Beyer. We'll talk about that more in a moment. It sounds like there's a chance that he may run on the Met Mile. I'd love to see that because that, for me, shorter is better for this horse. And I say shorter, I'm not saying he's going to be a sprinter, but mile and a 16th, max mile and an eighth. I just don't see him as a mile and a quarter type. I'd love them to keep him at these sort of mile to a mile and an eighth ranges. The La Troyenne, I don't really have anything real special to add to that race. The Turf Sprint, World of Trouble is just a monster. It doesn't matter what surface it is. It doesn't matter the condition of the surfaces. He goes out there and just absolutely puts on shows. You have to view him as one of, if not the best outright sprinter in the country. Turf or dirt, does not matter. Humana Distaff, Mia Mischief, she takes her game to that next level at Churchill Downs. She really appreciates that surface down in Louisville. Big effort from her. I thought both Baffert fillies would fire a little bit better than they did. Marley's Freedom, she ran fine. Couldn't quite get to Mia Mischief. Perhaps the track was in Mia Mischief's favor as opposed to a horse like Marley's Freedom. I thought it was pretty fair, to be honest with you, on Saturday, though, so I don't really want to use that as too much of a crutch. And the filly I liked, Embolden, when the pace wasn't ballistic, thought she was up against it, but I still expected a little bit of a better kick down there, down the lane. The Distaff Mile, Beau Recall, look, anyone that has paid attention to any of my analysis or videos or pods over the years has known that Beau Recall, I loved her early on as a 3-year-old. I picked her in the Belmont Oaks when we were out doing one of those shows for NBC. And she just always felt like she couldn't quite get over the hump. And boy, ever since she's gone to Brad Cox's barn, she's gone to just the next level. And maybe she's finally, coming into her own, and she's finally living up to what I thought she would end up being at some point. She's got a giant turn of foot. Really impressive effort from her. I liked Daddy as a legend in that race, and I thought she ran really well. To me, this is a very, very nice building block. Hopefully we see her in the Just a Game at Belmont Park on Belmont Stakes Day, because I think that could be a very, very nice spot for her. Grade 1 race, second off the bench for George Weaver. Thought she ran real well here in this spot. Churchill Downs, what is there to say? Matoli might be the star of the weekend, given the way that he went out there and absolutely blitzed a Grade 1 field. He did it in a new fashion. He showed off that new dimension that he can sit, relax kindly, not be pulling, not be crazy, and still go and put the boots to a nice field. You have to think that this is going to be one of, if not the best sprinters in the country. And he, along with World of Trouble, I mean, you want to throw in some other horses as well. You want to throw in a Roy H when he's feeling good. This all of a sudden, this is a really nice division. You've got some big, might be a little bit top heavy, but you've got some really talented runners. Matoli could end up going in the Met Mile as well. That would be a hell of a showdown between Matoli and McKenzie at Belmont Park. The American Turf, I don't really have anything special to add to that. Shocker. Chad Brown wins a graded stakes race on turf with Digital Age. The Pat Day Mile, kicking myself for going with Dunph over Mr. Money. If you watched that stakes preview last week on video.drf.com, I chose Dunph. I've been waiting for this turn back, this one-turn configuration all along. Probably a little bit too close to the pace. But I said I wanted Mr. Money in second, and I was torn, thought about both of them. Ultimately went with Dunph. I thought he was going to be a better price. He certainly was. But Mr. Money absolutely whacks that field, goes off and wins by more than 5. I hope they keep him doing this, because I laid it out. I thought that those runs down at the fairgrounds, 2 turns, just kind of flattened out, put in that nice move rounding the far turn and leveled out. Keep him at these one-turn configurations. I would like to see him in the Woody Stevens next. And the Turf Classic, Bricks and Mortar, he's just a racehorse. He's not a brilliant horse. He's not one of those horses that's just got a hellacious sort of, run down the lane. But he wants to go out there and beat you, and that's an admirable trait for a horse like this. Multiple Grade 1 winner now. He is. He's rock solid. You hope he stays sound for Chad. Bigger and better things still to come for him. So Bricks and Mortar, another Grade 1 victory for him in this year's Turf Classic. Let's take a look at the weekend's best as far as Beyer speed figure performances are concerned. 3-year-old males on dirt. Well, he crossed the wire first. He's placed 17th, maximum security. You're into 101 in the Kentucky Derby. The 3-year-old fillies on dirt break even, the 94 in the 8 bells. 3-year-old males on grass, Digital Age, 90 in the American Turf. 3-year-old fillies on turf, Concrete Rose with that big finish in the Edgewood with a 93. Older males on dirt, McKenzie, a 109 in that smashing win in the Ali Sheba. Older fillies and mares on dirt, Mia Mischief, 99 in the Humana Distaff. Older males on grass, World of Trouble, 104 in the Turf Sprint. And the older fillies and mares on turf, Beau Recall earned a 101 in this year's Distaff Turf Mile. There you have it, the weekend's best as far as Beyer speed figure performances are concerned here on the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show. However you've been listening, thank you for doing so. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. However you take this thing in, please rate, review, and subscribe. If you're over on Twitter, you can follow me at Bernier_Matt. You have questions, comments, concerns, leave them over there, or beneath the video player on the YouTube channel. We'll have all sorts of great stuff leading in this week, and we'll already start getting ramped up for next Saturday, not this coming Saturday, the following Saturday. That will be the second leg of the Triple Crown. We'll be down looking at the Preakness at Pimlico down in Baltimore. So this upcoming Thursday, for the preview edition, I'll be looking at the new shooters, the fresh faces that look like they are going to be signed on for the middle leg of the American Triple Crown. So we'll find out a little bit more about some of those fresh faces, maybe take a look at some replays and some past performances of those ones, looking to take on whomever it is that exits the Derby and runs in the Preakness here in 2 weeks' time. So until I come back with the preview edition, best of luck however you play, whatever you play, wherever you play. It's been the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show.